Hello, I'm Dr. Greg Gordon, and I'd like to discuss swaddling. So basically, I'm a fan of what I'd like to call the over-up swaddle. And there's a lot of different swaddles out there, but I want to go over a few topics and clarify why I think this swaddle is clearly the best swaddle out there. There are three topics I want to cover today. The first is SIDS, or Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, and discuss it relative to swaddling. 2, there are hip problems known associated with some swaddles. And 3, I want to give you my safe swaddling recommendations and show you step by step how to do the over-up swaddle. Okay, swaddling and SIDS. So is there an increased risk of SIDS or decrease when children are swaddled? SIDS, fortunately, is a rare event and therefore difficult to study. There really is evidence of both an increase or a decrease. However, most studies, and all the review articles, meaning all the big articles I could find, agree that the evidence shows that swaddling and placing an infant on their back to sleep significantly reduces the incidence of SIDS. So why are some people against swaddling? Research does show that infants who are swaddled and then placed prone, face down, have a 12-fold increased risk of SIDS. I don't think this is really a big surprise to anybody, as the whole back to sleep movement hinges on the fact that children are sleeping on their backs. Other anti-swaddling SIDS articles come from research that shows that infants who are swaddled sleep deeper. And some experts, and I'm going to put that word in quotations here, attempt to extend this finding and say that if they sleep deeper, they could have an increased incidence of SIDS. I really think that's too big of a stretch. So in support of swaddling, the majority of research shows that swaddling overall decreases infants' risk of SIDS. This includes a large nationwide case-controlled study from New Zealand. The Journal of Pediatrics has published 2 large reviews looking at the swaddling research. Van Sluman's Swaddling: A Systematic Review in 2007, and Thatch, Does Swaddling Decrease or Increase the Risk for SIDS, 2009. And both state that the majority of the evidence supports swaddling decreasing the risk of SIDS. Swaddling and hips. Experts agree that swaddling, when done incorrectly, can cause permanent hip problems for individuals, specifically developmental dysplasia of the hips. However, when done correctly, with hips slightly flexed and abducted, it is safe. There are 2 cultures that have had a huge history of hip problems. Both the Japanese and Navajo Indian nations had a high population incidence of swaddling-related hip problems. The Japanese used a swaddling diaper to swaddle their infants. At that time, 1 to 3.5% of their population had these devastating hip problems. After public education programs ended the use of swaddling diaper, the incidence of hip problems dropped to 0.2%. The Navajo American Indian Nation used to swaddle infants to their cradle board, so to an actual flat board. After this practice ended, the prevalence of hip dysplasia decreased from 6 times the U.S. average down to the U.S. average. So the International Hip Dysplasia Institute is a group committed to educate and help prevent future hip dysplasia in children. They recommend 2 different types of swaddling, including what I call the over-up swaddle, and I'll show you that swaddle later in this video. The important thing for them is that the hips should be flexed and abducted, which means the knees should really be up and out. I'm trying to show you that here. So some swaddling issues. Swaddling blankets. If you go to Target or Walmart and purchase swaddling blankets, those blankets are simply too small to swaddle a child. The best swaddling blankets are rectangle shaped. The shorter side, or the length, should be at least twice the measure of the shoulder to foot distance of your infant. You'll often hear from new parents, "He doesn't like it. I try and swaddle him and he cries." It is very common in the first few weeks of life that parents will kind of quit swaddling because they feel like their child doesn't like it. More often, they don't like it for the first 30 seconds, and once they're swaddled and realize the comfort, they settle in and enjoy it. Swaddling bags. So some experts recommend swaddling bags. I find a lot of new parents like them because they're simple. You just simply Velcro the child into kind of a swaddle. And some experts like them. Obviously, some people obviously promote them and make money on them. My concern with swaddling bags is simply if a child rolls over in a bag, they're still swaddled facing down. And for most swaddling techniques with a blanket, if a child rolls over, they're unswaddled. Okay, when to stop swaddling? Another controversy in pediatrics. Some experts recommend that swaddling is ended around 2 months of age. This recommendation is based on the theoretic risk that if a child is swaddled and placed on their back, that if they roll over, that they would have an increased risk of SIDS. This is simply not shown. Yes, it's shown that children who are placed on their bellies have a higher risk of SIDS, but not children that are strong enough to roll over. I have an issue with stopping swaddling at 2 months because I think it can interfere with good sleep habits your child has developed. Also, there is research that shows that children, when swaddled and placed on their backs, tend to stay on their backs, meaning they're not likely to roll over. So we stop swaddling our children usually between 4 to 6 months. So the over-up swaddle is my preferred way to swaddle. For 3 reasons. 1, it's easy. Anybody can learn to do it in a matter of minutes. 2, it's portable. Some of the swaddling techniques I've seen kind of bunch up or fold up the bottom of the blanket in a way that the child is meant to be left laying down. And I enjoy swaddling my children, holding them a little bit before placing them down to bed. And lastly, it positions a child's hip safely, as we mentioned earlier, slightly flexed and abducted. Alright, let's go over the over-up swaddle. Step 1. Place your infant on a rectangular blanket with his shoulders even with the top edge of the blanket. Step 2. While holding his hands together and down with your right hand, fold the left corner across the baby's left shoulder. Step 3. Roll your baby on his side and tuck the left corner of the blanket behind the child's shoulder. Step 4. Fold the right corner of the blanket across your baby's left shoulder. Step 5. Tuck the right corner of the blanket behind the child's shoulder. Step 6. Fold the bottom flap up and wrap the flaps around the infant's back. The final result is a snug swaddle with correctly positioned hips.